Policy Hour. I'm coming to you from Hamilton, about to do an event. I'm in a cafe, so apologies if there's a bit of noise. That's just the best I can do in this situation. So we only have 30 minutes. Canadian Foreign Policy Hour, of course, is a weekly critical look at Canada's role abroad, and we should be calling ourselves the Canadian Foreign Policy Half an Hour, because we've cut in half um, the the. Can people hear me? Hear me? Yeah. Okay, good. Um, so we've cut in half the time because of the Monday night volunteer meeting for the NDP leadership campaign. Um, Anyways, I'll get right to it. There's a story about the impact of air quality in Canada because of the forest fires of recent in 2023. They're saying that 50% increase in particulate matter in cities because of than the year before. Basically, the point is that they're saying the pollution now in the atmosphere, or pollution that Canadians are breathing in during these forest fires, is worse than smoking. Anyways, just another example of the impacts of the climate crisis. And of course, Canada is an outsized contributor to the greenhouse gas emissions that have been released. The Wall Street Journal had a front page piece headlined "Rwanda emerges as a feared power. Nation has evolved from object of sympathy into aggressive powerhouse." There's nothing really new in this piece, but it's just a kind of confirmation of what has been clear, which is that Rwanda is a violent destabilizer of certainly its neighboring nation, but also dispatching troops to Angola. Sorry, not Angola, Mozambique. Getting the former Portuguese colonies mixed up, and the Total, the French giant oil giants, protecting its operations there. And the story goes into some of the other history of Kagame being trained in the U.S. The reason I highlight this is that this question of, I think, Rwanda it's a really important question in terms of the scope of the violence that Rwanda's continuing to be responsible in Eastern Congo is something that I think deserves a lot more attention, and the Wall Street Journal is sort of confirming what's been out there. There's a story in the Globe based upon this UN experts rapporteurs, and they basically criticize a Toronto Stock Exchange listed company, Dundee, for its copper smelter in Namibia. And the arsenic and other pollutants just led to huge health impacts in the Namibian community. And according to the article, they were essentially rejected. I think it might have been Romania, one of the European countries, because maybe it was Serbia, but because of the health impacts. And they ended up doing a whole bunch of their smeltering. It's now been sold to a Chinese company, but for a decade, they were responsible for significant pollutants. And it seems to me it's an example of this sort of we'll export our pollution in a African country, a country that's colonized, weak, and the local population will feel the impacts. And another example of just the Canadian mining devastation around the world. The Globe had a story, Canadian firms' armored vehicles are being used in Sudan's war zones. And the Straight Group, which produces light armored vehicles in the UAE. Some of their uh, uh, armored vehicles have been now used in Sudan, which is obviously huge, incredible level of violence. And the RSF has been responsible. The worst, the military is bad, but the RSF's even worse. And Canadian vehicles being supplied now. They're produced in UAE, but the company has Canadian operations, has had ties to Canada. The National Post had a piece, Canada, a dangerous place, CSIS poll finds. It's a front page article. And CSIS is saying that 6 in 10 Canadians feel their country is more dangerous than 5 years ago because Russia invaded Ukraine. India was linked to murder of Sikh Canadian, and Canada reckoned with the scourge of foreign interference. So I'm prepared to believe that the public does have that sentiment, but of course the scourge of foreign interference is largely a manufactured crisis. I do think India, assassinating a Sikh activist is a real incident, and is I guess some sign of danger. I don't think that the Russian invasion of Ukraine actually does present any form of serious danger to Canadians. Uh, but it's also what's left out of the questions, right? Is Canada a more dangerous place because there's more climate disruptions, more forest fires, and is Canada a more dangerous place because there's people don't have the security of home? More people are living unhoused and don't have the security of homes and living in abject misery on the streets. But the CSIS, of course, is trying to hype up a sort of a certain, well, first of all, justify their budget, but also hype up a certain geopolitical outlook. Now, a story in the Globe points out that as Mark Carney has cowered on the tariffs, the reciprocal tariffs that were imposed on the U.S., that the public is still very much supportive of a more aggressive position. According to this poll is cited in the Globe business section, 2/3 Canadians want a more aggressive response to the U.S., and 80% wouldn't trust an agreement with Donald Trump. Yet we haven't even got the minimum things like any sort of ending of Canadian assistance to U.S. naval deployments, officer exchanges with the U.S., Canadians based at U.S. bases around the world, amidst Mark Carney's positions. On Carney's visit, which was both Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, maybe Wednesday as well, in Europe, and we discussed it last week about his announcement that Canadian troops could potentially go to Ukraine, which is, in my view, a further escalation. Now, of course, the troops are supposed to go if there's some sort of peace agreement, but you never hear any discussion from Carney about how we need a peace agreement, negotiations. So in fact, the announcement or the possibility of Canadian troops is just a part of a broader escalatory kind of dynamic. And other announcements this week that go in that same direction is that, well, part of the visit to Kyiv last week was further details on Canadian arms, $2 billion package of arms to Ukraine. But then Carney went and extended Canada's military mission in Latvia, which from 2026 to 2029, which is going to put it at over a decade. He made a number of, according to Globe's summary, all 4 of Carney's stops in Europe, Poland, Germany, focused on defense themes, right? So his whole visit in Poland, obviously Ukraine, Latvia, Germany, is all military oriented. So that's where Carney's at. That if you're going to do trips in Europe, it's really going to be all about militarism. And as part of this, there's just more and more stories. We've discussed this, multiple times in recent weeks. There's a front page business section, Globe business section. Ottawa urges banks funds to offer loans for defense industry. Right. And in that piece, Melanie Joly, who's the industry minister, says, quote, "I'm not the finance minister nor the prime minister, but I can tell you that we need to be able to invest $9 billion in defense spending more than usual before the end of the fiscal year. And therefore, I think the BDC, Business Development Canada, can be helpful." So basically, Joly has gotten the Export Development Canada, the and I don't know, NSERC, or the Research Council, a whole series of different crown corporations, government institutions, to put more emphasis on assisting the military. And she's pressing private banks as well to be more aggressive in their funding of military matters. This is just part of this incredible, radical militarist turn that Carney has brought in. The Journal de Montréal had a piece that said that this year, Canada's increased its military budget by $11.8 billion this year, just this year alone. And that's $11.8 billion forever, right? They're not planning on going backwards. They're only planning on increasing that on an annual basis. $11.8 billion is 4 years of a national child school food program. They say that's about 2.7 billion per year. So you could do 4 years of that with 11.8 billion. That's just the add-on to what Trudeau had already significantly increased in recent years. And so we're just spiraling more and more military spending. It's funneling through all the different government institutions, the private sector, corporations, the banking sector, et cetera, et cetera. The National Post had a front page piece, I believe it was the Saturday paper, and the headline was "Deconstructing the Disengagement." And it interviewed 4 different Canadians who were living in Gaza when the Israeli government, Sharon, back in 2005, withdrew I think 10,000 or so colonialists that were in Gaza, Israeli colonialists. And basically, I think all 4 of them, it was a like personal story. It's on the front page, and then I believe it was 2 full pages devoted to it. And it was just these basically making the case that Israel should never have left Gaza, and we should have continued. Now, it of course never really left Gaza. They withdrew soldiers, but they still controlled Gaza with the siege and the different control over airway and sea, the ports, and everything, what got in, the ground, etc. But the basic case, and it was done through this very like kind of personalized, these sort of like these were the poor victims of disengagement from Gaza, and this was a terrible mistake, because if we would have stayed in Gaza, October 7th never would have happened kind of angle. And this is where the National Post is at 23 months into this live stream Holocaust. They are portraying the Canadians who went to Israel to make life miserable for Palestinians in Gaza as these big victims, and obviously they're making the case for today for Israel to Israeli settlers or colonialists to return to Gaza. And it's pretty remarkable just how horrible the media is. I mean, the National Post is just off the charts, but it's really across the board. The Globe's piece um, this week, I read all the Globes on my rideshare to Toronto yesterday, and the Globe's piece referred to about the assassination of five Palestinian journalists a week ago. It referred to a Hamas camera, right? That's like the Israeli justification for this latest round of assassination, mass assassination of journalists, was a Hamas camera, which in fact was a Reuters camera. But the Globe did the Israeli propaganda refer to it as a Hamas camera, or Israel alleges Hamas camera. And it's just stunning to watch this just complete acceptance, the doing the propaganda work of this state committing a Holocaust. Canadian Reuters journalist Valerie Zink, who's been in, I think she's in Regina, has been the Prairie's photographer, I believe, for Reuters. She resigned over the fact that the Reuters person in Gaza was assassinated by Israel, and Reuters more or less, buckled to the Israeli propaganda, knowing in fact that it wasn't a Hamas camera, but still, you can check out her resignation letter. Got lots of circulation. Obviously, a very good thing that she did in terms of standing up to this to the media bias, Reuters bias. There was a scandal this week about a McGill prof who said basically BDS is not enough. We need to be giving support to the resistance, the Hamas and Hezbollah resistance. That led to CIJA, Anthony Housefather, a whole bunch of these Holocaust promoters to come out and demand this professor gets turfed at McGill. I think he's got 10 years, so I don't think that's going to probably play itself out. But one more time, the Zionist lobby is showing their deep hostility towards basic civil liberties. Now, Gadas Hassa points out this image at McGill of the university posts this image of what she says at arguably the most prestigious Canadian university, McGill. Incoming students are made aware of mental health resources for Israeli students navigating trauma after 2 years of a Zionist Holocaust against Palestine. Palestinians, on their hand, are neglected. And so there's this ad at McGill, apparently, which says that Israeli and Jewish students access to sort of trauma resources in these difficult times. And it's just more of this sort of, the victims are those who are justifying, enabling the genocide in Gaza, and just the absolute hostility, indifference to Palestinian trauma, which of course is 1,000 times greater than Israeli trauma. The National Post is also going hard at Samidoun, further going at Samidoun, Palestinian Political Prisoners Network. And they are I think it's Klein's his name, Jesse Klein, has a piece in the National Post, and they're complaining about how Samidoun it's been put on the terrorist list, but it's still a registered nonprofit. I think it still has some status. There's some kind of problem with how the different agencies of the Canadian government operate on this front, and they don't necessarily share the information, or one doesn't lead to an immediate delisting of the other. And what was interesting with this piece is that the National Post columnist says, quote, "I'm a big free speech advocate, but even America's strong First Amendment protection end at incitement to violence." And this is just like stunning, right? Here you have a grassroots organization in Vancouver that's put on Canada's terrorism list, and the claim is that they said I think they said, what did they say? It was a death to Canada, death to the U.S., death to Israel. Or at some demo, somebody made some declaration like that, which is not, it's not illegal. There's nothing illegal about saying that. And that's not even why they're listed as a terrorist organization. That was part of the sort of propaganda of, oh, this is an odious organization, and the Zionist groups who had been calling for Saminud's listing for a long time, picked up on that and tried to, discredit Samidun because of those statements. But it's not actually any of the basis for listing. The basis for listing is the claim that Samidun, not that they were involved in any violence, but that they had links to the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, which they claim and has been engaged in anti-colonial resistance, armed anti-colonial resistance. But just the notion that somebody could say they're an advocate of free speech, but then be comfortable with listing this grassroots organization as a terrorist organization. I mean, this is like steps and steps away from, basic notion of free speech. But that's part of the sort of hypocrisy of the National Post, of Zionist organizations, right-wing Zionist forces. And on the note of the terrorism list, the UN doesn't consider Hamas a terrorist organization. It's only a few countries that do that. And in large part, it's because Israel's recognized as an occupying power since 1967. And according to international humanitarian law, people under occupation have the legitimate right to resist, including with weapons, against an occupier. And our terrorism list, of course, is hostile to international humanitarian law. When we're listing so many of these Palestinian organizations, I think it's 9, including 2 Canadian-based organizations that are listed because, or not including, on top of 2 Canadian-based organizations, Irfan and Samidun, they're listed because of their assistance to Palestinians. Our whole terrorism list is a attack against international humanitarian law on Palestinians' right to resist. Not to mention an attack against Canadian civil liberties more generally. Just Peace Advocates has an action alert this week about the Israeli Army Hospital. That's a registered Canadian charity. There's a Canadian Friends of, I forget the name of the Army Hospital, but it's apparently the hospital where either all or the most IOF members who are injured get treated. And over the past 5 or 10 years, I forget the number, they've raised about $30 million in Canada to subsidize this hospital. So all Canadian taxpayers. And it's just, I wasn't even aware of this hospital. And this is just the latest example. And it's into the dozens of examples of Canadian registered charities assisting different projects that either directly or indirectly support the Israeli military. And according to CRA rules, you're not allowed to support any country's military, foreign military. Just again, example of how Israel's given this special treatment 23 months into a live stream Holocaust. And if Israel is just treated as a right-wing ally, rather there's this special unique case, we just upheld our own laws, currently existing laws vis-a-vis Israel, that go a long way to end Canadian complicity and in Palestinian dispossession. A couple final things. Someone posted about Heather McPherson, who is, of course, the leadership candidate in the race. I actually saw Heather today at the Labor Day rally in Toronto, and I went up to her. She's been an NDP foreign affairs critic for the last 3 years. I went up to her and I said I shook her hand and I said my name's Eve Engler, and her reaction was absolutely priceless. It was to just instantaneously uh, uh, turn away and just like disdain, like utter disdain, leveled my way. And I was really trying to be collegial because, there's a decent chance we're going to be on a debate stage and presumably we're going to be crossing paths a lot as part of the NDP leadership race. And she was just completely hostile. And then about 20, 30 minutes later, I was walking in the NDP section with some supporters during the at the end Labor Day rally, this huge Labor Day rally in Toronto, which is why I came to Toronto. I did an event last night, and I later on I decided I knew she was obviously hostile, but I wanted to get a photo with her, and so she starts walking towards me. So I started speaking to her in French. I figured maybe that would kind of throw her off a little. And she begins to respond, says about a quarter of a word in French, and then just continues on with this, like, again, this look of total hostility. So so I think the race is on. Clearly she's not she's doesn't I guess not happy with some of the things I've written about her support of NATO, her standing up and applauding a neo-Nazi or a former Nazi in Parliament, her praising Erwin Kotler and working with Erwin Kotler as recently as June 11th, her support of tar sands pipeline, and her position on China and other issues. I have to say that this week McPherson came out in a positive light, and she called basically for Canadians who've been fighting in Gaza to be prosecuted, and that the Canadian government should raise the whole question of Canadians fighting in Gaza being pursued. And I think that's in part a reaction. It's a bit of a spiral reaction to my campaigns calling for this. I've obviously criticized her on that issue, that she hasn't raised it, and my campaign has been raising that issue. So I think it's a sign, which was raised by the National Council of Canadian Muslims, and I think that's part of why McPherson raised it. Is we've got it going. We've been putting it out, leafleting about 10,000 leaflets of Palestine demos, calling on this issue. Lots of traction on this point online, and the NCCM brought it up, and McPherson's brought it up. So I think we're already impacting the NDP leadership race. And the other positive thing I'll just mention before basically ending here is Burnaby, the suburb of Vancouver, passed a resolution calling for a two-way arms embargo, declaring itself a anti-apartheid municipality, which is another positive development. A friend, actually, a good friend's brother, Daniel Tetro, is on the city council, and he's one of the major players in pushing. They got it unanimous. So this is a positive development. It's already 6:29, and so the leadership race or the volunteer Zoom is starting in I guess in a minute. So I think I'm going to end it here. But again, 30-minute. Thanks a lot for participating. I'm sorry that's no time for comments and questions. But we will get back at some point to the full hour, which gives more time and space for questions and comments. But yeah, I'm going to leave it here. Thanks, everyone. And if anyone wants to participate in the volunteer meeting, there's going to be some new developments there with regards to finances, with regards to crossing the threshold for signatures. We're at 900. Thanks. I'll leave it there. Take care, everyone.